about how I went from $800,000 in savings and investments 4 years ago from the time I'm recording this in May of 2020 to 1.3 million today in May of 2024. And you might think it's some kind of magic trick, but I'm here to tell you it's not. So, well, to get started, I probably need to wet down your hair like I did last time. Water triggers have always been my favorite ASMR trigger. So you guys know I'm new at this. But doing my best to give you triggers and a little bit of financial information at the same time. Okay. And I'm chewing gum too. So anyway, okay. I'll have to figure out how to do that without getting everything wet. I hope you're all doing well today. I hope you have a good job that is paying what you're worth. And if it's not, hopefully you're out there trying to find one that does. You guys know I was living paycheck to paycheck for 11 years. And those were the best years of my life. Because they gave me the skill sets I needed. Once the thriving years came. And they did come, and we're going to talk about that in today's episode. So remember I said in May of 2020, I had $800,000. And I know this because I think I shared with you I have a podcast called Broke at 40 that I started in April of 2020. And if you want to find my podcast, it's on any podcasting platform, Apple Podcasts, etc. You can find it. And episode number 6, I talk about having $800,000 again in May of 2020. So, I'm going to see if I can do this by just talking through without looking at notes. Because I find it really interesting that 4 years have gone by. So, the time I'm recording this again, it's May of 2024. And I started asking myself, which I do a lot of times, I want to cross-check and reverse engineer. And I was like, wow, how did I go from 800,000 to 1.3 million? How did I do that? Well, the first thing I wanted to figure out was, and you'll see in subsequent episodes coming up a little bit later, when I talk about 2020, 21, 22, and 23, I looked at what my portfolio returned each year for those 4 years. And the numbers are 2020, my portfolio returned 11.5%. 2021, my portfolio returned 11.5%. In 2022, I lost 15%. That's a 1.5. In 2023, I gained 15%. That's a 1.5. So if you look at those last two numbers, those netted to 0. So let's take those out of the equation. But the first two numbers I gave you, 11.5 and 11.5, is 23%. If you divide 23% by the number of years, 4 years, you get 5.75%. So my average rate of return each year was 5.75%, even though the market went down and then it came back up. So you'd probably say to yourself, 5.75 is not that much in terms of market returns. Now remember, however, my portfolio is balanced. 60% stocks, 40% bonds, and maybe in 2020 it may have been even 70% stocks, 30% bonds. I'm not sure. Let me cut your hair just a little bit more. Okay, so back to the story. Well, how did I get from 800,000 to 1.3 million? What's the differential in that equation? 500,000, right? Well, how can the market return that much to get to 1.3 million from 800,000? here's what people don't always understand when I talk about the fact that I was able to get to these larger dollar amounts. My net worth is $1.5 million because I paid this condo off back in 2019, even though I refinanced in 2012. So, taking net worth out of the equation, my savings and investing is 1.3. You add the 200 to this, you get to 1.5. But again, 800 to 1.3 is a $500,000 differential. Well, here's the thing. If you go to dinkytown.net and you go to a compound savings calculator and you just put in the numbers, 800,000, 5.75% return every year for 4 years, how much money did I have to put in to my accounts? Every year is what we're trying to solve for. I put in $62,500 on average every year for those 4 years. So, look at it this way. Let me just comb out your hair. So, that $500,000, we can look at it as balanced. If you take 62,500 times 4, you get close to 250,000. So what you guys need to understand is that was my money that I was putting into those investments every single year. It wasn't growth. It was 250,000 of my own money. The other $250,000 to equal 500 was interest, dividends, and unrealized gains. Does that make sense? So 250,000 over here, 250,000 over here equals the $500,000. So as I finish cutting your hair, I just want you to think about that. You can look at it a lot of different ways. You know, a lot of people probably look back over my past and say, oh, he must have had so much market growth, and that is true. I did have a lot of growth in the bull market, but what I want you to understand is I just gave you an example of 4 years where I put in $250,000 from my paychecks. I was living on 30% of what I made and saving and investing 70%. That's what people don't always understand, that I literally had to sacrifice multiple years. But you know, I didn't look at it as sacrificing. I really didn't. I wanted to get to a certain point so that I could then say that I don't have to work anymore. And I can have comfort going into early retirement, like what I'm going to do next year. So as you live your life and you go forward, always think to yourself, maybe I should sacrifice a little bit now, and there will be years in the future where you're making a lot of money, even if you're not right now, and you'll make that more money. But the smartest thing to do is to save and invest it so that when you get to my age, you can then say that because you had saved the $800,000, and by the way, I'm not even doing an analysis on the $800,000. Most of that was my money too that I put into the market. But because I built the engine to $800,000, that engine, even before I retired, served me very well, just like it can serve you as well. In other words, because I was adding in $250,000, the output of that was that I made $250,000. So, can you see how that's an amazing thing? You put in $250,000, and because you've created the engine, it creates on its own the energy of 250,000. So I did not burn all of that money as I was making it. My burn rate was very low, and a burn rate means how much are you spending of what you're making. I had a low burn rate and a high savings rate, which then of course means, like I just said, you can almost double your money. In a sense, you can think of it that way. I would not have been able to make the 250,000 in that 4 years without first acquiring the 800,000. And so I think that's a pretty powerful thing to say to yourself, I'm going to save $62,500 a year, and at the end of those 4 years, even with below average market returns in those 4 years, right? 5.75, right? I did the math earlier, didn't I? I did 11.5, that's 23. The other 2 years net to zero. And yeah, I did that. So 23 divided by 4 years was the 5.75. That's not a high market return. And so that's how I want you to think going into the future, is always cross-check, reverse engineer your money, and it will make you feel so much more powerful every single day. And again, when people say to me, Evan, you were just lucky you had the bull market. Yes, that may be true. But most of my success with money was the money that I put in to my investments. So I'm going to leave you with that today. Your haircut looks amazing, by the way.